Hello, and welcome to Stokes Sound Podcast. This is the first episode. My name is Ed, and today I have a very special guest that's going to come and hang and talk to me, which is Gary Mictian, a fellow producer. So, Gary, say hi.
Hello everyone.
So, for those that don't know who Gary Mictian is, he is a producer, and we're going to be talking about vocals specifically and what goes into a pop vocal production during the recording process and the timing. So, talk to us, Gary, a little bit about kind of what do you use for tuning vocals and kind of what's your preparation, I guess, for vocal recording. So let's start from the recording side and then we'll kind of go into the editing side. I think that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, like, fundamentally, it always starts with the microphone, right? And, you get you've got a world of options when it comes to microphones. You've also got a world of options when it comes to singers. So it's a really fun kind of like thing to obviously if you're in like a setting where you've got lots of different microphones, it's fun to kind of pick and choose which one to use for a particular singer. In a lot of cases, you've got like your workhorse mic, like you like to say, with the
U87.
the U87. Yeah, Ed knows very well my opinion on the U87.
It just works on everything. I mean, that mic, it just works. I mean, for the listeners, talk a bit about you, Gary. Like, obviously, you're a producer and vocalist yourself. I mean, what do you mainly do in the sense of, so are you spending most of your days recording vocals? And, talk a little bit about yourself so the listeners can kind of get to know a bit of background of you.
Yeah. I mean, I am a producer-songwriter, so the majority of what I do is working with artists who want to, create something. And my sort of philosophy when it comes to like producing is to, I love working with people who have a unique personality. And when it comes to producing, my role is to try and identify, that in a person and be able to convey that in their music and capture that in a really like honest way.
Yeah.
So
that's where
kind
the
of
U87 comes in, right?
Yeah, literally. It's so good at capturing personality. So that's what I do. I write songs with cool people and
cool
it's
microphones.
fun. And cool microphones. I mean, like this SM7B that I'm talking into right now, I would argue is like one of the best vocal mics you can use for pop. But yeah, when it comes to like, my day-to-day, songwriting, production, and a lot of vocal work. If it's not recording my own vocals, it's recording the artists that I work with. And, I get a lot out of, being, as a vocal producer, being someone who is fully trained in that. I get a lot out of directing other singers through their performances and guiding them into a space where they can really deliver what they want to deliver in their performance throughout the song.
What kind of techniques do you do day to day? So, for example, you wake up at 8 a.m., you've got a session, let's say 9 or 10, you have a vocalist come in. So when you go from, I guess, getting out of bed in the morning to the session, do you do any preparation? Do you listen to the potential track that you're going to be recording the vocals to if it's a vocal day? Or do you kind of go in not knowing anything and then you decide what mics to use? Like, describe kind of what you, I guess, like techniques that you do before the session and during the session. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, like leading into the session in my own time, I do like actively think about like what kind of tone I want to capture when it comes to which mic I'm going to use. So in like my studio, for instance, I've got, my two options, which is the SM7, and I also have a TLM 102, which is my condenser mic.
Which is a fantastic microphone.
Which is a fantastic microphone.
Is it as good as the U87?
debatable. But you know very well that my TLM is soon to be replaced by a U47.
That's a lovely mic.
Yes, just a very lovely mic. So yes, I do like to think about, okay, do I want like a dynamic mic or a condenser mic? And if I feel like I really want to like capture a lot of detail in the singer's nuances, then I usually go for the condenser. Or if it's like a really energetic kind of belty kind of tune where they're singing really loudly, then the SM7 captures that amazingly. So I'm thinking about those things, but then when the artists come in to the studio, the very first thing I do is to make sure that they're comfortable and to make sure that they walk in feeling like they've put aside all of the stresses of the day or put aside any sort of like things that they might be holding on to, so that they walk into a space where they feel like they're ready to just kind of create.
Oh no, I see what you mean, because I always find if I'm recording a singer, I always find if I know that person before I'm recording them, I feel like I can get a better take because you've got that kind of connection there. So I from what you're saying, I kind of gather it's a similar kind of thing. You're trying to make the singer feel comfortable before the session, and then you feel like or just before you start actually hitting record, and then you're going to get some better takes out of them.
Exactly. The last thing you want to do is say like, so-and-so comes in to do a vocal session and you're like, hi, how's your day? Come straight into the booth. We're going to record in about 20 seconds. Are you ready? Can you imagine?
Yeah, put pressure on them.
I know. So yeah, like I usually like to take at least like 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning, just like chat, get to know like, usually it won't be the first time I'm seeing them. Yeah. So it's kind of like, how have you been since I last saw you? Like, what was your weekend like? Yeah. I mean, what is your weekend looking like coming up? Or like, what are some of the challenges you're currently facing? Like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, just kind of getting to know them as a person before you're going to obviously, because obviously I find like a vocalist recording vocal, obviously there's a lot of emotion. So they're kind of opening up to you massively as a producer. Getting that right take, that right characteristics within the vocal for the song that they're singing.
Exactly.
And obviously depends on the song as well, because if it's an emotional song, then obviously they've got to have a quite a strong connection with the person recording it to be confident, I guess, enough to open up and deliver that emotion, I guess, on the recording.
Exactly. It's a very intimate thing, and a big part of like how I go about what I do is making sure at every step I'm able to create a space where they're comfortable enough to just share, these things that are going on within them in order to achieve what we all ultimately want to achieve, is honesty in a recording. And that's for me the most important thing when it comes to working with another singer or musician or whatever. So yeah, I like to just really focus on creating that environment that means that they can just be really open. And because when I'm doing my vocal takes, I feel like I particularly have a very special way of doing it. As a vocal producer, the way I like to go about it is I'll take the first 2 or 3 takes to just kind of nail down the technique.
Are they full takes from start to finish of the song?
Oh, okay. So I will start usually by saying, okay, we're going to do a dummy take where you're going to sing the song top to bottom. And that is a great opportunity for the both of us, I, myself, and the singer, to get everything right. So
like levels,
I definitely, I take the opportunity to get the levels right, get the compression and the EQ and the reverb and all that kind of stuff sitting nicely so that the singer can feel like they're within the song.
While we're on that, regarding compression, how much compression are we talking when you're recording in? Are you talking like 6 to 8 dB, or are you talking like 1 or 2 dB?
Like 3.
Oh, okay.
I usually do, so like
not
2
lots.
Not masses of compression, just like enough to. I use 2 compressors.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll use
Why
like
2?
It's like that technique of like do a little bit of compression and then a little bit of compression
Yeah.
on top of that. So it's just kind of like, brings it all up. But so the dummy take also allows the singer to kind of feel like that. I usually say take this as a opportunity for you to like get comfortable within the space, get comfortable with the fact that there's a mic in front of you and you're wearing headphones, because when you're singing in a studio wearing headphones, it's a very different experience to when you're just singing in a space.
Well, that's why the headphone mix, I can imagine, is obviously, well, I know from doing it myself
So
as well,
imperative.
it's super important.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
I mean that's
interesting-
that's a whole topic in itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you actually put reverb, into the headphones, because I find that, when I'm recording a lot of the time, reverb is great in headphones, but I feel like sometimes the singer kind of can go a little bit flat when there's reverb in the headphones. I'm not sure whether it's just me thinking that, but sometimes I feel like the less reverb I use, kind of the more on point they are. I mean, that's generalizing. That's not for every singer, but I always find if it's too wet in the headphones, it can be a little bit off-putting. So
Absolutely. Well, it's distracting. Like, I definitely find that if I'm, recording vocals and my headphone mix is too wet, it's definitely distracting.
Yeah.
And it really does. It can be a little bit more confronting singing into a mic that is drier, and that will kind of get that sort of effect that you're talking about, where the singer will be more like, oh shit, like I need to sing in tune.
Yeah.
Like be a lot more focused on my tuning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll do a dummy take start to finish. And then I usually just delete that. And then
you delete it. I guess so.
Yeah, I know. How controversial. Very controversial. Yes, I do. I can be a little bit destructive at times.
I don't advise deleting stuff for the people listening here.
Only if you're a very professional person, you can delete things. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, it was a dummy take. Like, I don't fucking need it. Like, I'm happy deleting things. But some people obviously, maybe don't delete things. But yes. So then I will usually take in sections. So we'll do the verses, pre-choruses, choruses, whatever. And the first 2 or 3 takes I will use to kind of nail down the technique. So I'll just get them to sing however they sing it. And then I can go about working out what the phrasing might be, make sure I'm ironing out any sort of vowel shapes that they're singing so that they're singing it correctly.
Yeah.
And in a way that's comfortable and is coming across to the listener so that they can actually tell what they're singing.
Yeah.
Just nailing down these little like small details right at the beginning, so that like it's there, it's in the pocket, and rhythm as well. All of those things.
And then once you've done that, do you kind of go through? So obviously, you've trial and errored microphones, I can imagine. So you've gone with one of your microphones that you have.
Yeah.
And then you've gone through obviously the dummy take, and then are you going to then do kind of verse by verse, verse, chorus, pre-chorus, or verse, pre-chorus, chorus, more like separately? Or would you tend to find that you prefer that some singers actually no, I'm going to do the whole take from start to finish, and then we're going to comp via that?
Yeah, sometimes it really depends on the vocalist.
Yeah.
I usually, more often than not, I rarely find someone who wants to do top to bottom a couple of times, because that's very tiring. I think that's very suited to something like an acoustic song where it relies on it being like an arc of a performance.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like just a typical pop song where everything relies heavily on punching in,
Yeah.
then we'll always do it in sections regardless.
So you do it in sections, and then obviously you then go through multiple takes. I mean, let's say, how many on average takes are you kind of doing? Obviously, it will depend on the singer, but if you just take an average, are you talking kind of usually 3 takes, or are you talking 20 takes per verse?
I'm very particular when it comes to takes. I've seen sessions where someone will send me something and there's like 20 takes for a verse. And I just think that's ridiculous. I personally think that, you're going to get what you need in no more than 5 takes.
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody should be ever doing more than like 5 takes or 6 takes at the most. If this is, and I'm bear in mind, I'm talking assuming that you're working with a very professional singer,
Yeah.
someone who like really knows what they're doing. Granted, there are cases where we don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might have to physically do 20 takes.
Yeah.
But if you're doing, say you're working with someone who's really fucking good, I don't think that you should ever do more than like 5 takes, because like you will get what you need out of that. You'll definitely get your comp, and if you have to do tuning, you can correct the tuning. But it's all about the way that I go about it is it's all very quick fire, because we're capturing magic in the moment, and that energy, that magic in the room, it doesn't hang around. It kind of happens and then it disappears. So you have to be really quick in order to capture that. So I don't like being very like, okay, record this verse, and then there's like a 5-minute pause. Oh, hold on, let me like just change something here. Like, okay, now can you do that again? And then like, oh, hold on, no, stop. Like, I don't like any of that. I like to be like, okay, that take was amazing, go again. Or like, okay, great, do another 2 takes, fantastic. And then I might give any notes that need to. But it's like, if you're also on that like sort of energy of that, you feel like you're capturing something brilliant, because the singer also feels like they're delivering something brilliant, then the both of you vibe on that, and that in itself creates this energy and this magic that we're capturing.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone on like this massive tangent, but
no, not at all. It's very interesting to hear it, because as producers and as mixers, we all kind of do the same thing, but at the same time very differently as well. So it's interesting to kind of share knowledge and understand what other people are doing in the game, and
exactly
seeing how people are doing it. And when we're looking at especially pop vocal production, everything is very timed and tight to the grid, and there is some arguments to be said that stuff should be quite free, and timing isn't really in jazz music, they're in time, but they're all in time with each other, where in pop music it seems to be everything is just snapped to the
it's
the BPM
locked. Yeah.
And so obviously with vocals, I mean, the way I edit vocals is I'll have all my takes, I'll go through the comps, and then I will in Pro Tools I can then nudge. I know you're on Logic, aren't you?
I am.
Logic v Pro Tools, eh?
What a debate. I mean, that is like that could be a week's worth of debating right there.
Yeah. We'll agree to disagree. I'm joking.
Yes.
They're both great. All honesty, every single DAW does the same thing, just in different ways. So
it all depends on what you started learning on.
Well, yeah.
Because
this will be
they
for
all
another.
do the same thing. Yeah. Continue back.
This will be
Like
for
I said, a
another
week's
episode.
worth of debate.
So with vocal production then, and like, as I said, everything's kind of in time. So once you've got your lead vocal take, if we're just talking strictly about the lead vocal, and then we can talk about the backing vocal too. But with the lead vocal, you've got this great take, and kind of then what are you doing? Are you going through timing? I kind of nudge in phrases. I don't tend to do small like individual words, and unless it really is out, I tend to kind of do it as one, just to keep that natural flow there as well. But yeah, talk about what you do. I'm sure the listeners would love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I don't end up like nudging that much, because when I'm capturing the performance, I focus on making sure that the singer is nailing that pocket, if you know what I mean. Like, that kind of flow, that rhythm, the feel
To begin with. Yeah.
So that like, when we're doing the take, it is perfect. Like, you've got that comp with the emotion, the delivery, and that right sort of pocket.
That's if you've done your job right, though. Because me talking from a mixer point of view as well, I'm not always in that part of the line of the job. That tends to have been done before that sometimes gets into my hand.
Yeah.
So I'm
So if that is not the case, then
Yeah.
yes, I am very much inclined to nudge. I would never do like you say, like I would never really do singular words.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to like chop it up too much because that is actually quite unnatural. It's the same as for me, it's the same principle as nudging drums, live drums. You don't necessarily chop every single beat because the drummer had like spent years and years of practice acquiring their feel.
If he's a
And you
good
don't,
drummer.
if that person
Of
is a
course,
good drummer,
we're talking about the best of the best here, aren't we?
yeah. We're assuming we're working with professionals. So yeah, and it's like the same with the vocalist. So it defeats the purpose chopping up every single word.
Yeah.
So you want to like nudge it in sections like you do, and that's the best way to kind of achieve that.
Do you, as a Logic user, I know other people that are in Logic as well, and they tend to use the flex time on vocals. Is that something you go into, or how are you nudging it? For the listeners wondering about timing vocals, what is your process in Logic to time the vocals? Obviously, I understand with the phrasing, but kind of what tools are you using to nudge?
Yeah, I don't use any flex because that's like not the best principle when it comes to maintaining quality of audio, especially if you're dealing with a lead vocal. It's always best to do edits with cutting and moving. So chop your region and nudge it that way by moving it. And like I know that Pro Tools obviously has tab to transient, which is a very popular feature. And like Logic, you can do something similar if you kind of Logic does have a nudging feature in the edit window. So if you go on the top and you go edit, move, and then set nudge value, and then I usually set it to 10 milliseconds, and then there's a key command which is command arrow, but not. It's command. I don't know what the thing is called, but you'll find it.
Is it the one next to the full stop?
Yeah. So you know how there's the full stop and then the comma,
Yeah,
and then there's the like two arrows that go either.
Right,
what are those called?
Ones. Yeah.
So it's command and those two, and it moves the regions that you chop.
Amazing.
So that's how I nudge.
That's a great Logic tip. So for all those Logic users out there, remember
for all
that
my
one?
Logic users out there, you can nudge in Logic.
Amazing. That's great to know. And then, so once you then got the lead vocal, everyone's happy. You've done the timing, obviously, with the nudging. You're probably not doing a lot of nudging if you're recording the vocal, because, like as you said earlier, that you're recording that you're capturing that to begin with in the recording.
Yeah.
So then we talk about vocal tuning. Now, this is a very, very big topic. Everyone seems to tune vocals in very different ways.
Yeah.
I actually think tuning a vocal is 100% art form. It is. I find that there's a vocal, you can make a vocal in tune, but how you make it in tune and how natural you can get it to sound, the vibrato of the vocal, it's an art form. That, to me, that's just creative, because it's so easy. We've all had it before, where you tune a vocal and everyone goes, "Oh, it sounds robotic." Mm-hmm. In my eyes, whenever I'm tuning a vocal or you're tuning vocals, I kind of want it to be in tune, but I don't want it to sound like I've tuned it. And I find that doing that is hard. Well, obviously it gets easier the more you do, but I do find that you've got to have a good ear for it, and you've got to do it a lot, and you've got to know what the singer was singing to capture that. So talk us through it. I mean, the popular tuning software everyone seems to be using is Melodyne and Autotune. So, what are you using, Gary?
So I swear by Melodyne. I just love it. It's just good. The way, I mean, like, you will always hear people talk about vocal tuning in a way that, like, you want to tune the vocal, but you never want to know it's been tuned. Exactly, just to reiterate what you said.
Yeah.
And like the way that I kind of go about my tuning when it comes to the tools that I use, I've got Melodyne and Autotune. So I do just enough Melodyne in order for Autotune to finish the job.
So you Melodyne first, and then you run it into Autotune.
Yeah. So what I do, my sort of ethos when it comes to vocal tuning is to always serve what the singer actually sang. So that's how you get these like edits that you might hear where it does sound unnatural or robotic, because someone has taken a word or a note and they've edited it in a way that the singer didn't actually sing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I was to like demonstrate, a very common one is like the onset of notes. So like typically when a singer starts singing a note, they might land on top of the note like like that, or they might dip into the note and go and
Right.
so that's technically two notes, right? If you go as
Yeah.
opposed to just landing on top of the note where it's just
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm with you.
when you're tuning that, you don't want to flatten it entirely if someone had dipped into the note, because
Right.
that's what they actually sang. They dipped into the note. And so you don't want to flatten it entirely, because then that won't sound natural. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the fundamental for me when it comes to tuning, is to always serve what the singer actually sang.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just setting this up. So yeah, so obviously you've always got to serve what the singer sang, but are there any techniques that you can tell the listeners that you put into your work of Melodyne that can help other people that are Melodyne in vocals?
I'm just trying to think. I think like the thing with it is that there's so many variables, like, because every singer sounds different and every singer sings a different way. I think if there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no like one way serves every instance. So if you might do something for recording A, for instance,
Yeah.
you've got this thing that fits that purpose really well, but you've got recording B and you try the same thing, it might not work because you've got a different singer.
I see.
Yeah. So it's good to know, lots of different techniques.
Do you snap audio at all? In Melodyne, you got that function where you can highlight everything, and I think it's pitch drift, and is it modulate? Oh, you tell me. I can't remember.
Yeah. So you've got pitch correction and pitch drift.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it. I mean, like if I'm trying to be really, really quick, I will highlight everything and I will snap pitch correction and pitch drift to around like 90% each. And then obviously it's a computer, it's not going to get it right. Or rather, you can't just trust it to get it right. So, do that and then sweep through it and see it will get most of it right. And then there will be some of it that it didn't quite get right. So you just undo that and do those manually.
And you hit
that
alt.
It got wrong.
It's alt, isn't it? You do, and you drag it up slowly, and you just find
You
never actually bang anything onto the middle, do you?
Not necessarily, because like remember with Melodyne, what you want to be looking at is not the blobs, but the lines within the blobs.
Yeah.
Do
you know that confuses a lot of people, because you see a lot of kind of beginners using Melodyne and they're just basically just getting every single blob just in the middle, and actually you just got to use your ears, haven't you? And,
exactly.
And sometimes something sounding a little bit out of tune, it actually is nice, or it works, because obviously it depends on the music as well. Like you could have analog synths that are just ever so slightly out, and if the lead vocal, if it's just a synth in the vocal and it's working, then leave it.
Exactly. I think that segues into like a really good point to make, is that at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it sounds good. If you've got a note that sounds good without you having had to make an edit, don't make the edit. So less is more when it comes to Melodyne, absolutely. But yeah, I also like to think of it as like, tuning a guitar string, for instance. Like if you like snap everything to like 0 cents on Melodyne, that might not necessarily be actually in tune to the music that you're working with. So you do have to use your ears and tune it in a similar way that you would tune a guitar string.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it sounds good. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how.
Are you using the 90 snap on the pitch correction and pitch drift on, you know, on every single vocal that you kind of get in general? Are you normally always pitch snapping 90 first and then doing manual edits after, or do you ever just do the whole thing manually?
I usually like to do the lead vocal manually.
Okay.
Because that's obviously the most important bit.
Yeah.
And that's the part that is going to have so much that goes into bringing out every little detail that it has.
Yeah.
So it has to be perfect, obviously. And I think you'd be doing everyone a disservice if you didn't actually just sit down and take that extra 20 minutes that it might take to just do the lead vocal manually. Like, you deserve it. The singer deserves it. The song deserves it. I know we're all trying to like find ways of like, you know, being quick, but some things do need to like have that care.
Well, that's why I think, you know, vocal tuning and, you know, pitch correction and all that sort of stuff. It is, like I say, it's an absolute art form. To get it perfect is, you know, but when you do get it perfect, it sounds great. So, you know, going on from that then, so you've got your backing vocals. So once you tune your lead vocal, I'm guessing you do the same procedure on the backing vocals. You go through one by one, you melodine them all up. Now, the other big topic that you hear in pop production is backing vocals being bang in time with the lead vocal. I mean, I find that when I'm mixing vocals, right, if I don't even need to sometimes process the vocals to get them to sound good. The main thing that I find, and I do see it, more often I see it, great, but sometimes you get mixes through and the vocal recording is great. And, you can tell it's been done on obviously a nice microphone, probably an expensive mic. It sounds it, good preamps. By the way, don't get me started about preamps. I love my preamps,
God.
but we'll do another podcast on preamps. But
yes,
yeah, you get these vocals in and everything sounds good, and then you go to the chorus and it just sounds a bit loose, and then you tighten it all up and you send it back to the client or whoever needs to sign off the mix, and then they're like, "Oh, I love it so much," and you're like, "Well, I haven't really done anything. All I've done is actually just timed everything." So I think there's a lot to be said about timing vocals or timing everything within each other, like so it's all relative.
Yeah,
is a massive thing for me because, so that moves on to talk about your process for timing backing vocals to lead vocals, I guess. So I'm guessing you start with, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, is you nudge what you need to nudge or you try and capture it to begin with. And then with backing vocals, are you then timing the backing vocals to the lead vocals? And if so, what is your process? And how are you doing it?
Yeah, there's nothing better than a perfectly in time stack of BVs. Like, how satisfying is that? But like that's just
very geeky, but we love it.
We're
audio nerds.
Like, literally, if you've got like this beautiful stack of vocals and you solo it and it's all just like perfectly snapped in time, it's just like, oh yes.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like, it's all, we're making pop music here, so it's all about it being perfect. So I, ever since I got Vocaline, that is the software that I use, and that is, completely revolutionized my vocal editing.
What's your process with Vocaline then?
So yes, to answer the question that you asked me that I completely forgot, I always time my BVs to the lead vocal.
Right.
And if it's like a BV thing that's not the lead vocal, then I'll just pick a BV and use that. But always, time it all to the lead vocal and get it really nice and tight. And then that's going to be, that's going to come across in a really pleasant way. And Vocaline is a fantastic tool because it really does, do the job quickly without any like real artifacts, and it is essential, I think, when it comes to vocal editing.
Yeah. Nice. So, you do that, and then so once obviously the backing vocals are then timed with the lead vocal, how do you then go about kind of any pop kind of vocal ad libs? Did you kind of, I mean, I know you, and I know you love ad libs and stuff, so what's your process on that? Do you kind of leave as is? Do you edit similar to the backing and the leads, or kind of what? You tell me.
I actually hate ad libs.
Do you actually?
Yeah,
I got that wrong then. I thought you loved ad libs. I don't know why I thought that.
But you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because we actually haven't had this discussion. I was
But why do you not like ad libs? It's like, for me, it's like, it's like their song.
I know. I mean, like, some people do ad libs brilliantly, like say Ariana Grande, for instance. I really admire the way she does ad libs. Yeah. But personally, when it comes to like when I'm working on my own productions, my vision is I just don't like ad libs. I think they're unnecessary. I think they just kind of
That's a very bold statement.
I know. I just have this like firm view on ad libs as it just being like, you don't really fucking need it. It's just kind of like, I just want to hear the lead vocal. And if there's an ad lib that like I hear, that I just have to get, then we'll get it. I will always sweep through and do a top to bottom and let the singer do some ad libs, but more often than not, I'm only using like 30% of the ad libs that was recorded.
So I mean, that kind of brings us on then to arranging the vocal. I mean, when it comes down to ad libs, backing vocals, as you said, you don't really like to use ad libs. Fair enough.
I think it's just like,
are you doubling up harmonies? Are you doing like a left and a right, and then how many of them are you doing on the chorus?
Yeah,
I personally do 4. I do 4 left, 4 right. I know you tell the listeners what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I think when it comes to like the ad libs, for instance, the less you use, I think that is just very much more tasteful.
But if I use none, you would love it.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't need them. But yes, when it comes to like what you send me a song with no ad libs, I'll be like, yeah, that's great, man. Like, what happened? You got good all of a sudden.
No, I got tired, left the session early.
Yeah. When it comes to stacking my BVs, yes, the best practice is to, if you can, do 4 unison parts. So you've got harmony 1, record them 4 times, harmony 2, record it 4 times, harmony 3, 4 times, and so on.
And how many harmonies do you like? Obviously this question is going to obviously depend on the song.
Yeah.
But if you're talking in pop, specifically pop genre, let's say you've got an Ariana style track, what are we looking at?
So I always double the lead vocal when it comes to...
You double the lead, as in as a left and a right of the lead?
Yeah.
So you got 3 mono tracks of lead vocals?
Yeah, so if I've got my stack, say we're talking about the chorus, for instance.
Okay, you're not doing it on the verses then?
No, but anytime I have a harmony,
yeah,
I always layer it with the lead.
Really? That's interesting. I don't do that. Maybe I should try.
Try it, because like it means that the lead cuts through more. Because like you've got your better vocal and it's just like really thick and nice. So say like on the verse you've got a line that the singer is harmonizing, and say we're recording 4-part unison, I'm gonna be like, okay, I need you to sing the lead tune 4 times. Then you can sing the 3rd up 4 times, and then you can sing the 5th up 4 times.
I bet singers hate you after that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of vocals.
It is. And that's why you got to be quick, because they get tired and they get restless, and so that magic doesn't last forever. So we're all human. We all have like bodies that we have to maintain when it comes to singers. So yes, that's a lot of vocals. But when I'm doing my stack, absolutely, I always double the lead vocal and then do the 3rd and the 5th or whatever harmony on top of that.
Fantastic. That's really good to know. So,
you should try it.
Going on from vocal side of things, like vocal processing, sending stems off, people always ask, do I send wet stems, dry stems? Do you find in your production that you're creating any certain vocal effects that you find that are like so important in the vocal take that you leave wet for the mixer to mix?
Not necessarily. I mean, I particularly am not too precious when it comes to like reverb and delay.
Okay.
I think reverb is reverb, delay is delay.
Yeah.
When the mixer is gonna add that to the track, I don't think I'll ever hear a difference really. And the mix engineer is probably gonna have a better reverb than I do anyway.
Fair enough.
Because that's their job. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like production and effects, like say I use Little Altar Boy a lot, for instance. And for those who don't know, Little Altar Boy is a very popular vocal processing tool by Sound Toys that allows you to change the pitch and the formant. So that's how you get your like low robotic sound, or that high Alvin and the Chipmunks sound.
I see that a lot. For those people listening, I've mixed a few tracks for Gary, and there's a lot of Altar Boy here and there.
Yeah,
you love it.
I love it. I love it. I mean, like a big part of like my sound is like vocal effects.
Yeah.
And doing crazy like Little Altar Boy type things or like vocoder type things. So those are the things that I will send to the mix engineer, because those are production decisions.
Yeah.
Those are the decisions that you're making to towards the the sound, the final product,
the sonic sound of the track. I find
exactly.
that when I was mixing one of the tracks, I think it was, I can't remember the song now.
Was it my one?
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah, I think it was Goodbye. Yeah. Do you know what, actually, with the vocal production, it's interesting with vocals because I always use this, people always want this kind of pop sound, it's always, can you make this pop gloss, pop sheen, or whatever you call it. And I always find a lot of it is within the production. And I always say to people that you can only mix, it's like a chef. If a chef has bad ingredients or bad quality ingredients, the chef is only going to cook an average meal, right? It's not, so it's like for me, when I'm mixing tracks, when to make something sound incredible, obviously the mix helps. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I don't do anything. However, one thing I will say,
just make yourself redundant, why don't you?
I get paid and I just don't do anything. I just export. But I use Pro Tools, so it sounds better, doesn't it? That's another topic. But
back to your point.
But I always find when I've got a good production through, I'm not doing much to the vocal to get the vocals to sound good. I'm doing a high pass filter, taking out some rumble, and one or two compressors and an EQ boost. That's it. A lot of the time. And backing vocals, I tend to kind of group all together and have one track for BVs and just do it as a bundle of audio as one. And I always find that boils down to your job in a way, Gary, the recording side, the vocalist, the takes, the vocal production, what harmonies you've chosen to go where really does make a difference to a mix. I mean, I've had mixes before where the mix sounds great like theoretically, like engineering wise as a mix, but taking a step back from that and you listen to it and you're like, something doesn't sound like it. It sounds a bit like it's lost energy. And
do you know what that is?
Go on, why?
Sometimes there's a musicality that might be lacking.
Well, this is what I thought. I mean, guess what we did? We added an octave on verse 2. So it went from the chorus, and it just made that slight difference from verse 1, because verse 1 was just a mono vocal. There was no backing vocals, nothing else, and it was just putting a high octave on verse 2 suddenly made the mix sound great. And you're probably thinking, well, adding a high octave doesn't really affect the mix. But the mix at the end of the day is all within context, right? It doesn't matter if you've got a great mix, if the production or the vocal production, as we're talking about vocals, isn't to an Ariana Grande standard, then it doesn't matter who's mixed it or how good the plugins are that you're using. It's never going to stand up without the vocal production being there in the first place. And that's why, it's great to have these conversations where we're talking about vocal production, because it's so important to get right from the get-go,
Exactly.
you know.
Like, continuing on to your point of your example of like, oh yeah, the way that we made the second verse pop was add a high octave. Like, that's a fantastic decision, because I can imagine that it might have been quite a like muddled kind of example where the voice was a little bit too dark and not really cutting through, right? And what's the best way to add presence but by like using that high octave where it's kind of got that sizzle sort of sound, but you like blend that in just enough that it adds texture to the voice. And that's what cuts through, not necessarily the screeching sound.
Yeah, of course. And some people would be like, well, you could just add an EQ and boost the high end, but no, it's not the same. It's different.
No, that's different.
Yeah,
we're adding texture by introducing a new tone, a new layer.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I always say, to fellow producers out there and mixers, that I do a lot of processing, but I also don't do a lot of processing. I know that's quite a very contradicting thing to say that, but I always find that for me, if I have a great production, I don't need to do a lot as a mixer. I barely touch it.
I agree.
And my routing might be complicated in the sense of it might look like there's a lot of processing visually looking at it, but they're not doing anything. I remember with your track on Goodbye, which is actually on YouTube, which you can check out on my channel, Ed Stokes Music. You'll be able to see the video of Goodbyes. And I did that whole mix. And, it can look complicated, but if you actually look at the details of what I'm doing, I'm not doing a whole ton at all. It's people forget, I guess, the fundamentals of what mixing is, volume and panning. If you get your volume right and you get the panning where it should be, and that goes with vocals, panning vocals 100% left, 100% right, or, the second harmony maybe 70% left or 70% right. If you get that right, you'll find that you don't need to add loads of plugins. And I always find that the more plugins you add and the more processing you add, you're actually just killing the dynamics and sound of the track. It doesn't sound open. Of course, there's going to be scenarios where you've had to do a really complicated mix or you've had to go into so much processing and it does work. But more often than not, from my experience, they're less, I guess I get paid to do things, to not do them, to know when to not do them.
Exactly. That's the same as when I was talking about with the tuning, for instance. If it sounds good, don't make the edit.
Exactly. Because, and that's why it all starts from you in a way before I get it.
Yeah. I think especially that's, very similar to like the way that I mix. Like when I have got like dry stems, assuming it's a great production where a lot of those decisions were made correctly, then I'll do my balances, get all the gain staging right, and then all I ever really want to be doing is EQ and compression. Yeah, I don't want to be doing like any sound design, for instance, because that should have already been done.
No, that's true. Well, I think that kind of leaves us to where we're at. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It was a real pleasure to have you on. Did you enjoy your time?
I loved it. Thank you for having me.
That's all right. We'll have to get you on again. If you want to be on again. Would you like to come on again?
I'll have to consider it. You can be a bit difficult to be around.
What?
Honestly, I mean, like you get the two of us in a room talking about audio and we could ramble for days.